In this video, I'm going to be explaining how Russia is ever more isolated. So this conflict's been going on for well nigh 6 months now. Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, and Russia's been cutting itself off from the rest of the world deliberately, but in some ways, Russia's been cut off by Western countries. Also, although Russia has relations that are characterized by cordiality with certain African countries, a few Latin American countries such as Nicaragua. There are Nicaraguan military officers training there. Cuba, Venezuela, China, North Korea. North Korean laborers might be going to Ukraine to help rebuild the annexed regions. But you know you're in trouble if North Korea is the only country that is taking your side, and the only one that's going to put its people in danger, not even to fight for you, but just to labor for you. And I thought North Korean troops might go there because it's actually got a huge army, because it's such a militarized society, in return for cheap oil or something. But it hasn't happened so far. So Facebook was blocked. They're censoring the internet all the more. For several years, Putin's been envious of China's sovereign internet, been trying to build it, testing it, only semi-effectual, demanding access to various things, demanding social media networks take down, criticism of the Russian government, finding them a lot for this. Sometimes these fines are simply not paid. These companies are based outside Russia, so what are you going to do about it? Anyway, so yeah, for telling the truth, a war, things like that, saying it's a conflict, it's an invasion, anything like that. Even though Russian diplomats will sometimes call it a war, as indeed Sergei Lavrov did, the foreign minister. Why is he not cooling his heels in a slave labor camp for 15 years? Because that's what they do. And they're bringing back this Stalinist thing. They've done it for a couple of years, saying, well, they're going to rehabilitate themselves through labor. And some Russian government minister, I can't remember who, made the nauseating comment that some people liked it. It was educative for them. It made life better for them. What? If he thinks it's so good, why doesn't he go to a slave labor camp? I mean, these are almost concentration camp conditions they had in the 1930s. Not saying such a high number of them died, as in the Third Reich, but quite a few did. Anyway, so another way that Russia's been cut off, and this is in terms of transport. Well, about 40 countries have banned Russian and Belarusian airlines from their airspace. So Aeroflot, that's Russia's flag carrier airline, has lost half its destinations. They can't really fly anywhere in the European Union, anywhere in North America, or even some non-EU countries like Switzerland, Singapore, South Korea, Japan, and so forth. They can't fly over their airspace. So they can fly to some other countries, but I mean, where are the other fairly popular destinations for Russians? Turkey, Egypt, the UAE, Thailand. That's about it. They do fly to other countries like India, but not very much. And obviously, it's been a problem for Western airlines. If you can't go over Russian airspace, you have to go over the poles, or like the long way around from European countries to the Far East. Anyway, they can't get their planes repaired. They're almost all Western manufactured, often by Boeing. And so 4 Russian airlines have issued memoranda, which have been leaked to the media, telling the pilots how to make the planes last longer, so they don't have to do too much maintenance of them. Go easy on the brakes. Don't take off with maximum thrust and things like that, because otherwise these things will need more repair. They're going to wear out quicker to try and extend the service life of the planes. So no spares, no repairs. There's often maintenance which can only be done in sanctioning countries if they're not going to do it. Now, Aeroflot is almost 100 years old, that airline now, and they're facing a major headache. They used to boast they had one of the youngest fleets in the world. Well, this is a problem for them. If you only bought a plane last year and you think its service life is going to be 20 years, and its service life is going to be like 5 years now, because inevitably parts will wear out and you can't replace them. It'll need repair, and the Russians don't have the know-how, don't have the kit to repair it. You're screwed. That plane is not going to be used in a few years' time. If the plane was 19 years old, was due to be replaced anyway, you wouldn't mind so much, and you'd have the money ready to buy another plane from a non-Western country, perhaps China. Russia makes its own aircraft, not terribly good, but they're going to have to use them. They'll have no alternative. Plus, the Chinese will stiff them. The Chinese will drive a very hard bargain. There are no discounts, even for allies of the Chinese. They will argue over every last penny. And remember, relations between China and Russia are never as warm as Putin would like to pretend. In the 19th century, when Western countries threatened China, they took ports off China. The Russians also threatened China when China was at its weakest. And so vulnerable China had to hand over territory north of the Amur River. The Chinese got very long memories. They would like that back one day, but they're waiting for the propitious moment when Russia is very feeble, and it might not be so far off, where they demand that land. And what are you going to do? We're your biggest trade partner. We buy so much of your oil and gas. How about when China moves beyond oil and gas? That might be 30 years or more away. Then Russia will be really screwed. So anyway, the Russian aviation minister, he said that Russia can last for 5 years on the current planes, because what they're doing is they're only flying part of their fleet because they don't have so many destinations, obviously passengers. Even Russians who might want to fly to Turkey or take an internal flight, they can't afford it as much as before because the economy is contracted. So Aeroflot, Red Wings, S7, Urals Airlines, Pobeda, and so on, they are able to say, we're not going to use that plane and we'll just cannibalize it for spare parts, but they'll run out after a while. Now, like all Russian government statements, I expect that one is too rosy. It's not going to be 5 years. It'll be less than that. And what are they going to do then? As I say, they can use some of their own second-rate technology, things that are Russian-made, or they can purchase them from countries like China. But, it's not going to be easy. So the tech sector is going badly. Even Putin has said so on television. The tech is struggling because of the brain drain that he's caused. So many Russian technologists, particularly IT engineers, have moved abroad to Georgia, to Turkey, to Israel, Kyrgyzstan, and so on. Some Russian-speaking countries, some not, places they can enter without a visa. I mean, you've got a Russian friend who's moved to Indonesia. Admittedly, he's not in the tech sector. So going abroad whilst they can. So yeah, Russia's isolated. To some extent, Putin wants it that way. He doesn't want Western influence, but there's the whole Schengen visa thing. Remember Schengen, that town, I think it's in Belgium, they brought up this scheme years ago. Most EU countries are in it, some are not, some non-EU countries are in it. But if you're given a Schengen visa, you can go to any of those Schengen countries, about 30 of them. Are the Schengen visas going to be cancelled? President Zelensky of Ukraine said you should stop allowing Russians in. Estonia is talking about doing that, with the exception of those who are already born in Estonia. Remember, Estonia had a significant Russian ethnic minority. Some have become Estonian citizens, some have not, some have left. What if you've got a relative in Russia, something like that? What if you're a Russian who's a spouse of a European Union citizen? There might be some exceptions for that. Is it a good idea or bad? What do you think? Because maybe you want to help Russian dissidents get out, you want to increase the brain drain, or no, do all Russians have to suffer, even the innocent ones? We must remember the majority of Russians actually support this war, and it made a tangible change. It's diminished their living standards. There are a lot of goods and products they can't get. I mean, they're not starving or anywhere near it or malnourished, and the economy is not wrecked. It's contracted about 6%, according to the Russian central bank, probably more. It's going to contract up to 20% by the end of this year, a few more percentage points next year. So the Russian central bank says that it'll return to growth in the fourth quarter of 2023. Now, like all their predictions, I'm sure that's wrong and over-optimistic. Might return to growth sometime in 2024, but they're in for a serious economic downturn. But none of this necessarily means that they'll change path. So that's it. So Putin sort of burned his bridges with the West. It's hard to see a way back if he stays in office, even with the withdrawal unconditioned from Ukraine, payloads of compensation, hand back Luhansk, in Donetsk, Crimea. But he would lose so much face, he might be overthrown by his own Camarilla, who would regard that as treasonous. I think we have to look to a post-Putin era. The trouble is he'd want to pick a mini-me, and really would be someone shorter than him, probably, someone with hair, going by the old bald, hairy rule. One Russian ruler who's got hair on his head, replaced by a bald one, who's replaced by a hirsute one, by a bald one, by a hirsute one, by a bald one, and so on. It's worked that way for centuries. So being a traditionalist, he'll do that. He did that with Medvedev, someone who's cut from the same cloth. He said someone from the junior generation, but someone he thinks will continue his legacy. He can see this person as a way of him perpetuating Putinism. But that person may change. Remember, Nazarbayev appointed Tokayev in Kazakhstan, thinking that would happen. Well, you can see how that worked out. Right, thank you for watching my channel. Look at my website. Subscribe to me on Patreon. Donate on PayPal. GeorgeCallahan79@gmail.com. Bye.